So I just want to say going into this that you can watch my previous videos and know that I was actually extremely hyped for these films. So I wasn't a hater going in like some people were. Not at all. But now I have become the nemesis that will never be in the franchise, so to speak. But so I just wanted it to be clear that I was not a hater going in. I had no ill feelings going in. I was actually on the hype train. And also I've decided that because there's a lot to kind of cover here, that I'm going to do this in a two-part series. I'm going to cover the things of the first game that were or were not included, and then I'm going to do a second video touching on the things of Resident Evil 2. You know, I'm going to do the smart thing and turn this into two separate projects. I'm not going to try to rush and cram this all into one long video. Some advice maybe some people maybe should have taken, but moving forward, there's going to be Spoiler City. So if you haven't seen the film, this is your warning. Come back, check this out after the film, see how you feel, if you feel like me. Or you can stick around and watch this, and maybe I save you a few bucks and you can just check it out when it comes to streaming, or just not even waste your time at all. If you're a big fan of the series, more than likely you're going to probably be disappointed with this. If you're not, you may very well still be disappointed with this. It is a very convoluted film. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, so we got a list of all the main characters of Resident Evil Remake, which is the same as the original Resident Evil 1. So if you're wondering who made the cut for the film, this is who we got, guys. There's no Barry Burton or Rebecca Chambers to be found. Nor any of the Bravo team, really, except for Richard Aiken, but he's part of the Alpha team in this film, for whatever reason. But we'll get into that. So we'll touch on my boy Chris here. So he was done pretty well in the film. The only issue I really had was some of the lore changes that was just fat added onto the film that they didn't need to add. And not enough showcasing him, really. That was an issue with all the characters, but I knew it was going to be a problem when you try to fit two complete stories into less than 2-hour film. Other than that, he was done pretty well. Robbie Amell casted as Chris, I thought was perfect. So that was one thing I will say I give a thumbs up on in the film. I'll give them that. Chris was done pretty well. So next up we got Jill. I was one of the people that was actually okay with the casting. I saw Hannah John Kamen. Not really sure how you pronounce that, but I've seen her in other things. The Stranger, she was phenomenal in. She was also in Ant-Man and the Wasp. So I was actually really cool with the casting choice. The issue is she just didn't really feel too much like Jill. She was very, like, at one point she pulls out a gun to point at Leon, who's passed out drunk at the bar. We'll get into that. She pulls out a gun and actually points it at him, and it's like, an official badass STARS member, professional SWAT cop, like, it just felt out of place. Like, who would really fucking do that? She just, and then they kind of played on that, like, she's like almost irresponsible, and they make jokes about her and her gun, and it just didn't really feel too much like Jill. I wouldn't say it was horribly done, but it wasn't really done justice either, the character that is. So I'll give it they did okay. Moving on. Alright, so let's talk about my boy Wesker and how they massacred my boy. So the makers said they wanted to make him more relatable and not just a straight up villain, like one that you can kind of understand. Well, it's like a newsflash, motherfuckers. He is the main bad guy of the Resident Evil series for most of the franchise, all the way through Resident Evil 5. He plays a big part behind the scenes, and he's like the Darth fucking Vader of Resident Evil. So with what they did with him, and then in the end, like, he ends up working for Ada, like the little tidbit that Ada gets, which we'll touch on here in a bit when we get to the Resident Evil 2 characters, but it was just trash. 2 thumbs down. So we'll touch on real quick about some of the cut characters. So Barry Burton and Rebecca Chambers, like I said, are not to be found in the film whatsoever, which I understand because they decided to put 1 and 2 together, so some cuts had to be made. But it's like cutting out characters. It's like cutting out the twins of Harry Potter or some shit like that. Like, they're important to the story, and now moving forward, if they're going to try to tie them in, they're going to have to make shit up to why they're tied in, and it was just handled horribly. And then Richard Aiken is part of the Alpha team that goes in to investigate the mansion. So it just begs the question of why even fucking do that? Like, why not just include Barry? Like, that was just an unnecessary change. And then Richard plays such a small part. He just gets got by the zombies they're in their first encounter. So there's no yawn. There's no cool Neptune death. He just gets got quick. So it was just a fucking waste of a change. And then as far as the Bravo team, you know, there's no Rebecca. There's no Joseph, Kenneth, Boris, and Rico. They're not in it. It's just two throwaway characters are the Bravo team that they go investigate. And they even include the crows in this a couple times, and so I was like, oh, maybe they're going to do the Forest Spire thing. But no Forest, no nothing. They're just gone. So summing up everything about the characters, they just handled a bunch of them wrong. They just changed a lot of lore when they were saying that, you know, they're going to really use the source material, but it's like, no, you guys didn't. You know, the cut characters of Barry and Rebecca, fan favorites. I will question forever, especially the whole Richard thing, making him part of the Alpha team instead of just having Barry like it was in the games. It's just one of those things where it's like Hollywood just likes to change shit up for whatever fucking reason and think it's a good idea, and it never fucking is. I don't understand when they're gonna learn. And then, you know, we don't even see any of the Bravo team, realistically, except for Richard, but he's on Alpha. It was pretty disappointing. And then Wesker isn't this main evil bad guy that we all love to hate, you know. I mean, he of course betrays the team in other ways, but you know, he's more of a pawn in the grand scheme of things. He's not actually in with Umbrella. He's actually working for some other company, and yeah, it was just handled pretty poorly. It was not directly using the source material. I promise you that. Alright guys, so the Resident Evil franchise is known for its creature designs. Some are very, very iconic, and so going in I was wondering which would be included in this film, and which weren't going to make the cut. So, without further ado, this is what we got, guys. We got some zombies, we got the Cerberus, we got a couple crows, and we got Lisa Trevor. And Lisa Trevor is actually a good guy in this film. Who'da thunk it? She actually saves Leon and Claire in the hallway when they're going against the Licker. She fights them like she's the new Alice of this series. They never even really explain her backstory that much. They don't explain why she's wearing the skin on her face, which is, you know, if you don't know from the games, it's the skin of her dead mother. And she's actually a boss fight in the game. She's not a good guy. Very tragic character, very sad story, but in the end, she is an enemy. Yeah, so they just decided to go that route with it for whatever reason. And then, like, there's certain things like the Hunter. Sorry, my green screen effect's kind of messing this up. But the Hunter, very iconic creature, pretty much the Licker of Resident Evil 1, nowhere to be found. Nope. And then the Tyrant, you know, the main final boss, not in it either. Just gone. So, and I understand films have budgets and whatnot, but this is why you don't combine two completely different, separate stories into one thing. You know, it looks like we're never gonna get any of this. I mean, maybe later down the road, if they end up making sequels, they might somehow try to incorporate them. The Yawn and the Neptune get kind of mentioned briefly in a joke that Jill mentions while they're in the STARS office. She says something along the lines of which would be a worse death, by a big snake or a great white shark, which is, you know, kind of a throw out to Richard Aiken. Either he dies one of those two ways in the remake of Resident Evil 1, depending on a couple choices. But yeah, there's no Plant 42, which is, I don't know why, I've always been a big fan of Plant 42. That's not in there. You know, the spiders, whatnot. And like I said, I understand budgets, but they hardly incorporated anything from the games here. So, 2 thumbs down on that, guys. The one boss that you included, you completely, like, you made a good guy. Why? So that's going to wrap up my part 1 of this video, kind of touching on the things that they did or did not include from Resident Evil. As you've seen, it's more did not include from Resident Evil 1. But we'll touch on some things in my second part of the video, because since they did combine the stories, it's all kind of convoluted and overlapping of each other, so it's kind of hard to talk about some things without talking about events that happen in Resident Evil 2 in this film. So in the next film, I'll also touch on a couple things that they did do good. It's not all bad here, folks, but it's gonna be disappointing if you are a big fan and you were going in thinking they were gonna do a lot better with the source material. Like I said, I was very upset when I left the film. I can't even think of a time, like, I wasn't even that upset with the Paul W.S. Anderson films. Like, for me, it just doesn't make sense. If you're gonna, like, broadcast that you're using source material and get us all hyped, and then it's like you just really didn't, to me, it's not false advertisement, but it's like false hope, I guess. But we'll see. Maybe you guys feel differently. If you do, sound off in the comments below. If you liked the video, if you didn't like the video, that's fine. This is just how I feel about it. But yeah, if you liked what you saw, please make sure to subscribe. Press that little button down below. Thanks for sticking around this long if you did, and I'll be releasing part 2, covering everything about Resident Evil 2. Thanks, guys.